Ah, right. There's a little thing. To avoid injury, do not throw at anyone's head.
So that should we say that?
It actually says not. And in case I can't read English, there's a little picture of this with a cross through it. And then it says, make sure that those around are aware of the situation.
But it hasn't harmed anyone.
Not yet.
No, because you haven't cut out their head.
No, we have. I did.
It gave Danielle quite a fright this morning. Through the pelvis. Before using the product, read and understand the user manual and inform others of proper usage.
We'd have to read the manual.
I think that's it. Just read that.
Is that what Melbourne Price is doing? Checking the manual
Yeah.
to make sure that our usage was correct.
Yes.
That's why the bell is in there.
Yes. When in doubt, read the manual. Is a famous saying in my house. All right. So why the bell hand? Oh, is mine on? Why use the bell hand? What does it do for you or not do for you, as the case may be?
I think it's a rhythm.
A rhythm?
And there's an opening and closing all through the body.
Yep. So there's a rhythm and an opening and closing through the body. Do you want to be the... Seeing as they've moved away, I was going to do the writing because you are just relentlessly over there and I have to come to you because the power is in the people. I can't be back there writing. Oh, but you're there, so that's quite good. Rhythm is always a tricky one. No.
R-H-Y-T-H.
Yeah, and a R-H-Y, but let's not be pedantic. I am a spelling pedant. Anyway, so there's a rhythm, right? Yep. And there's opening and closing that somehow has an influence on opening and closing in the rest of the body. Yep.
So we were all in the same group and we also discussed
Raise.
we also discussed how how it affects your tonus during that and maybe even lifting, whether you're lifting like that or you're lifting like that. And we spoke about the multifacetedness of it because you've got your rhythm going, but you've also got your other things which kind of your breathing, maybe you go in time with your breathing or maybe it's the same shape you make with other parts like your ring muscles or your sphincter or blah, blah, blah. And then the heart, Martina talked about, maybe it's similar to that, but then what was the other thing you said, multifaceted?
Well, there's the breathing.
Yes. Yeah, I think you said it. It was the breathing, the heart, the sphincters, because you like throwing sphincters in.
We love throwing sphincters in.
And Martina and I found it similarly a very soothing sort of thing.
Soothing, calming. So that's the tonus thing that could be. It
soothed Martina and myself.
Yes.
Perhaps led us to elegance.
Oh, elegance. Elegance. That was it. Yes. Yes.
Ah.
Yes. Elegance.
Okay. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. All right. Very good. I'm just going to throw all these ideas out there, and I'm hypnotising you, Leonie.
Just the middle part, your palm. There's lots of neurological. I don't know, there's information that goes to the brain, so it sort of calms the nervous system as well.
Yep,
I heard something like that anyway. And especially if there's awareness of that middle part too. Also, we suggested a little esoteric-like. There's mudras and things like that.
Ah, could be. So mudra is a meditative movement.
We had a few of those other things up there as well. Anyone else?
All right, keep going. Around the room, around the box.
Watch out.
Oh.
I found it a bit like a lockdown.
A lockdown.
Yeah, when we were doing it without that,
Yep.
I had the pattern going really well and nice and smooth. And then when we started to do that, it was like it stopped me and I had to think a lot more about what I was doing. And I think I may have even changed how I was doing it.
So there's something about having to divide your attention, like.
Yeah, whatever it was, when I started to do that, it was like it tied me down and I had to rethink how I was doing it.
So maybe even there's a constraint in there somewhere as well,
Yeah,
like it forced
like
you to
it.
move somewhere else. There's two things in there, isn't there? There's maybe it's a constraint, but also maybe it's what you talked about. I think when you said multifaceted, you mean multitasking as well? Or is that just me projecting? No. Yep. So it increases the demand on the system. Yeah. More?
We had lots of things,
Okay.
but they were all the same.
I love that in a group where someone says, oh yeah, we said it what everyone else said, so we won't need to repeat them, but, and then they repeat them. And it's like, but you can do that, it's fine.
So we felt that it spreads the attention.
Spreads attention.
And softens focus.
Softens the focus.
Differentiates the brain. It's like differentiated movements, but it feels like it's doing real sort of...
Okay, differentiates the brain. How are you going with all this, Ruth? She got so neat.
To throw a metaphor in there, hopefully it doesn't bring up traumatic stuff to do with doing the washing, but it's like a fabric softener for the nervous system.
Fabric softener for the nervous system.
We just kept coming back to it. It just feels like something very deep, very primal.
Deep and primal.
I mean, you brought that up the other day. We were saying like the jellyfish and the amoeba and single cell life forms. It's kind of like going back to the primal soup.
Today we were doing swimming. Yep.
It's also a bit like an endemic.
Yeah.
It's also a bit like eating your mother.
And that softens the transfer to the whole.
Yeah, it's like another Nemo goes into the anemone.
Yep.
You want to say something?
I was more interested in distal and proximal because I was doing it
up higher.
I was doing it, so we were doing the hand, but I was actually at one point feeling it all here, like
Feeling you're feeling the influence of this in your chest.
So distal to proximal.
Yep.
I can't throw.
You can bounce it.
I was just thinking, so you've got like closing and opening.
Yes.
That could also be like a sense of internal and external, like being inside yourself or outside.
Yep. Yep. Introspective and
that's what I mean.
extrospective. I think I just made that up. Ish.
See, because you are all introspective, I was thinking of the tendinosis grip.
Oh, the tenodesis grip?
Yeah. When you naturally relax and naturally when you flex back, your fingers bend. So
it's tapping into that. It's tapping into something biomechanical as well as neurological. Yeah. Nicole?
I just had I might not be wrong. It's probably more of a question.
I might not be wrong.
I might not be right.
Is that the possibility that you could be right?
Freudian slip. I was thinking there might be a hierarchy in terms of this being a very foundational wiring, and then if that's kind of sorted, then maybe you can go higher. Because it's from the animal brain, isn't it? This sphincter type.
Oh, where's Priscilla? Yeah. It's not from the animal brain, no.
Isn't it?
No.
Oh. Okay.
Everything, well, in as much as anything, everything and anything is, yeah.
And it just feels like a very, very sensitive part. So lots
a sensitive part?
sensor receptors here,
Yep.
and also seems to echo the tongue and the mouth in the way that it's something we touch with a lot.
Yep.
A sensory awakening. I mean, all of what we've said is true, but a sensory awakening.
Yep, sensory. Yep. I think that's what you mean.
Yeah, I tied it in with
big part of the brain, sensory. We'll
when
get back to that.
Julie, sorry, Susan.
Yeah, no, because you're on the right track. I'll talk more about that.
When Julie did the squishy bottle session, when she did the fabric, this is the movement that she used on the fabric.
All right.
And it evoked that soft, gentle touch.
And it's just incredibly evocative of what you're touching. So if you're doing it on the floor, you get an awful lot of information about the floor. If you're doing it on yourself, it seems to make a lot of sort of firing up or activity or liveliness wherever it is that you touch like that.
Yep. Yep. Dan?
Cats must like it so much.
I was just thinking then it could be, start of the developmental cycle of a baby, a newborn baby. They first grab something with their hand, the first movement they do, it could be this.
It is, yeah. So, and Margaret said that too, when cats are kneading, it's got that kneading, and cats do that apparently to get the milk flowing in their mummies. Yeah, so you won't get to experience this, but when babies are attached, they'll often have their little hand on the top of women who've breastfed, and they'll just do this on your breast. It's quite cute. This little starfish. Oh, you've got so much beautiful stuff to look forward to. You won't know it's beautiful at the time. In retrospect, it's really beautiful. I'm right, aren't I? Yeah. The rosiness just grows as you get older and older. Yeah. They do this lovely little. It's this kind of lumbrical-y thing. It's lovely. Because they can't do that because their little fingers are too pudgy anyway, and their brains can't do it. Right. Anything? Yeah. No. You can see my tolerance for the reflexes. That's why I keep looking for Priscilla, because she asked me the very first day, and I gave it to a full barrel, both barrels. So, and then only way I know. Yeah, that's right. Like I was saying, where's Priscilla? Oh. Anyway.
Just in terms of like spreading your attention and the pace you have to go at to keep that going whilst you're turning your head.
Yeah.
I was also thinking you kind of have your attention on the side that you're facing, but if you have to keep the side that's away from you going as well, it's keeping that portion in your awareness.
Yep.
There were two things. One was the point that Silvana made. I don't know if it was in there, but opening and closing, but also flexion and extension you spoke about as well, and being able to let go of flexion while you're extending and let go of extension while you're flexing, and alternating between the two. And then the other thing I was thinking as well was, and this is my physio brain again, I can't help it, but the intrinsic, like you were saying, that sort of the deeper intrinsic muscles that you need to shape your palm, and whether there was some link between that and other deep sort of postural muscles or spinal muscles and things like that that were involved in the movement as well. But that's a bit, I don't know.
The only over the top.
It's probably not quite relevant, but my daughter who's got cerebral palsy, she's obsessed with doing that with other people's hands.
Opening and closing them.
Opening and closing. She likes clapping as well, but she'll actually go to each finger and bring it in and out.
Really?
And she'll do both hands, and she'll connect them both at the same time as well. So I'm wondering if there's some connection with this.
Holding and letting go.
Yeah.
Is that something she can't do herself?
She does explore her own hands that way too, but she tends to prefer to do it with other people's hands.
Yeah. Interesting. Did you have something? You just thinking?
I had something different before.
You can say it.
But then that just reminded me of something. But anyway, now I have to think of what the different thing was. What did you say?
Intrinsic muscles.
Intrinsic muscles. Anyway, whatever. This is reminding me of, worked with a lot of people who have high tension in their body. Go to that. And that's right, that reminded me. So then I've had neck injuries, and often my fingers, my wrist, everything kind of go through to it. So I noticed that because I was doing this and doing all of that, then I wasn't able to use that so much. I had to let it go because it was busy doing something else. So I wasn't allowed to use my naughty habits to do it. So it was like, and it was not as much of an effort for me to turn that stuff off because.
All right. Yeah, big chunk.
I find when I do the bell hand really softly, it inhibits doing things too big or too fast. So it actually changes the way I do other things that I'm doing.
Yep.
Which is good for me.
Yeah. You big fast mover, yes. You. Yeah. Okay. I reckon we're any other. So there are so many. I think you've come up with pretty much all the things that I've ever thought of. Because this is one of the intriguing things. This is what Felt and Cross people do at parties. You know, you just get out a bottle of red and say, "What do you reckon about the bell hand?" And you just spend the next 3 hours talking about the bell hand. You don't do that at all. You believe it? No, I remember in our training. Sorry? Yes? What? Well, our red wine is better. Well, it is. Huh? I can top that because I remember our trainers in our program saying that they'd get together with these big burning questions and like, how many ways can you roll over? And they spent a party working out over 1,000. They come up with over 1,000 ways of rolling over. So that's San Francisco, party city. Anyway, okay, so we can take any of these kinds of domains. So yes, I think definitely there's a reason why the bell hand is going with a lot of lessons that are very relentlessly flexing or extending, because that's what it is. It's extension and it's flexion. It is, and it's the opening and closing, which is that kind of meta opening and closing. It has that kind of sphincter closing as well, so it's not just flexing and extending, but that kind of, it's almost like, you know, in a space capsule, that the way the doors close and things about like that, you know. I don't know. Yes. Yeah, fair enough. So, yeah, there is something kind of magical about it. Very sensory-wise. So here's my thing about the brain. In the sensory cortex and the motor cortex, the primary sensory and motor cortices, which are here, the hand takes up mega territory, like mega territory. So that's the point, is that those areas, so that it's both sensation and movement, and they're close together. Here, if you look at you've seen photos of not photos, because it's not real, an illustration of the homunculus. Right, so the little homunculus, which is kind of it's literally Latin for little man, because men discovered the brain. No, they didn't discover it. They're just the ones who wrote about it, like the rest of geography. In that little, which is the little fellow that is kind of representative of how much neuronal territory is devoted to different body parts. The hands are huge. They are huge because in the motor cortex, they're very dexterous, so they need a lot of firepower to move them with all the different permutations that hands have. But from a sensory point of view, as someone over here said, they are the most sensitive, along with the lips and the tongue. So the only other bits that are huge in the sensory cortex, the genitalia, incredibly sensitive, but they're not big in the motor cortex because genitalia are not very dexterous. That's my joke. Ta-da! You've had it. I usually say that as a question. What's big in the sensory cortex but not in the motor cortex? So if you're going to calm the nervous system down, if you're going to occupy a lot of brain space, use the hand, because it does occupy a lot of brain space in that cortex. So this is not the animal brain, this is the cortex. This is the so-called, human part of the brain. Now, of course, to do the timing, that's lower part of the brain. So the cerebellum is around timing, and the sequencing of it is cerebellum, so that's the back. The sort of overall postural tone is brainstem, so that's deep in. So I guess my point about this idea of having animal brain, reptile brain, mammal brain, human brain, actually in our functioning, we're using all of them all of the time. There's not something that we do that is reptilian, or something that we do that is mammalian, or something that we do that is uniquely human. When we are operating in an integrated way, we're using all of our brain. And that's the difference. That's a different way of thinking about motor control, that it's not a hierarchy and it's not one part suppressing another. Because actually, emotions and memory, if you think about that as a demarcation, are predominantly reptilian and animal. And I don't think anybody here for a moment would say that their memories are basic and reflexive. They're not. They're very sophisticated, right, in a way, but they're deep. So we've kind of moved away from this hierarchical idea of the brain to see that good functioning, effective functioning is networked across the brain, both across, I'm doing this, and up and down and back to front. And I can show you pictures that are true that show that the connectivity is like that. That this is the new kind of science in neuroscience, is around connectomics, the study of connectivity. And the connectivity is profound in all of those different directions. There's not a top down, it's not a bottom up, it's not a front back, it's not a left right. So all of those things about left brain, right brain, top down control, bottom up control are all pretty much bullshit, because when you see the pathways, it is incredibly equitable and it is incredibly distributed. And what makes us really functioning is that there is a seamlessness around the way the brain operates, rather than this kind of what would you call it, monarchy, with a boss. There isn't. There's no boss. Just isn't. It's very democratic. Having said that, from a volitional point of view, from a primary motor cortex, primary sensory cortex point of view, big territory for hands and fingers. So if let's say there is a kind of a tonus in the brain, like an overall level of activity, like when you're really hyped up and you just know your whole nervous system is, if you wanted to calm it down, why not do this, right? And then kind of get this backwash throughout the whole brain, if you like, of that. So you're right, it is, for that reason, and for the slowness and the integratedness of it. So it's a very powerful neurological event. It's a very powerful muscular event. Just from a local point of view, you can feel it, and then you can feel, okay, well, if I have to be soft here, then I have to be soft here, like you're saying, and then I have to be soft here. So it kind of works peripherally as well. And then, as Martina was saying, biomechanically, it holds true that for your fingers to be really soft, they can actually be very soft. So if you just lift your wrist up in a very kind of desultory way, your fingers will close. So that's the lesson that you were teaching last week. That's the surgeon's hand, or the dominant hand, right? That's a biomechanical thing, that when your hand is flocked, the extensor tendons are lengthened over this wrist, so the fingers just naturally lengthen. And if you flex your wrist like that, then the tendons of the flexors are lengthened here, so they will close the fingers. So this is what's called a tenodesis grip. So someone who has got nothing in there, no activity in their the muscles of their fingers, they can grip by simply doing that. Simply lifting, extending and flexing their wrist. So it's paying attention to that as well. And that's true too, what Marissa was saying around the intrinsic. So that lumbrical kind of grip as well is very soft, because it stops you doing that. Can you feel the difference between that and that? right? It's quite different, right? So because it's quite clear we're not grasping, we're not, so you could almost say it's a bit Buddhist too. We're not grasping and we're letting go. So it's, no attachment. We're just letting go. Yeah. 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 That's right. Yep. Yep. Which is what, yes, so people who are talking here about when they were touching, I think it was Danielle, you're touching, you really get more aware of what you're touching because you're using more surface area. Len?
Is this silly idea of the anti-gravity muscle? Yeah. Feldenkrais talked about the idea of the anti-gravity. Like if you put your hand this way, they'll go that way. If you put your hand this way, they open up.
Yep, so that's a biomechanical sort of thing, is that the mass, everything has a mass, and so everything has a centre of mass, i.e. a centre of gravity. Let me skip over that statement. Yeah. If it's really passive, it will fall into gravity. Yeah. And there was a general view that anti-gravity muscles tended to be extensors and flexor muscles tended to go with gravity, and we tend to extend against gravity. But we hit that on the head pretty sweetly a lot because often he'll get us to flex against gravity, which is why we don't like it. Some people don't like it on their back. We were flexing against gravity. So those things depend on the orientation.
Right. I kind of got the feeling that he was disagreeing with the idea that it was purely extensor reflexor and it was more about position. That was a feeling I got.
He is. And that speaks to, so in between the hierarchical motor control theory and what we now teach, dynamic action theory, the ecological people brought in that don't forget gravity, dickheads, because the hierarchical people really did. They just said all this head writing was reflexive. And actually, no, it's learning to posture against gravity, which is what the ecological people brought into the picture. Don't forget the mechanics of the environment that we're living in, which Feldenkrais absolutely paid homage to as well.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Who's the next boxer?
Have you tried if the bell hand actually helps releasing all over high tone, like in an ABI or in a stroke?
If you can get people to pay attention long enough, yeah. If you can almost give them anything. And in fact, and this is not my area, but that people with autism who rock a lot, there's some suggestion that this is actually what they're doing. They're just trying to equalise themselves and trying to give themselves something to pay attention to because the world is so shitty and so confusing. They're just trying to, whoever said here about, lockdown in a way, like just give yourself something else to do. I think that's what they're doing, like kids with autism, not just kids with autism, because who does this? Who used to do this as a kid? Who still does this as a kid? And a lot of you were rocking this morning. I don't know if you noticed that, but when you were chatting, I was looking around the room and people were rocking. It's, and people who work with kids with autism will say, oh, it's self-soothing and all this sort of stuff. Well, yes, it is. There is something about something that's slow and repetitive that is, we're using it in a way that is calmative. We could do it in a way that's not, like we could do that, and that would really wake you up. Silvana.
So I'm listening to all the talking, and there's a lot of talk about the softening that it can have if you're having a stressful day, you're wired up on high tone, like Martina said. But I'm just curious also, can it have the inverse effect if you're someone that's too relaxed or someone that might be low tone? Because I'm just thinking it wouldn't have an inverse effect if you're quite low tone, but you can manage that movement. Wouldn't it bring you?
Yep. Why not? Yeah, why not? Yeah. It wakes me up. It wakes me up.
Either.
Yeah.
Really.
So it's the diet that makes overweight people lose weight and underweight people put on weight in a way, because it's this idea of equalising. This kind of so that's why we don't use the word relaxing. Feldenkrais is really good for relaxing. If you said that to me, I'd run a mile, because the last thing I need is to be relaxed more. I would be comatose, So that's why we don't use those kinds of words, because for some people it's not what they want. They want
so rather than soften, it can make them more lively.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. Yep. So emotionally, I got the mug, empty mug. So we've talked about, the neurology. We've talked about the sensory stuff, which is the neurological. Talked about the biomechanical. This idea that it might recap the intro versus extra, so the opening versus closing, so the looking outward, looking inward. Like if you've got the eye on the palm of your hand, like that. I don't know what tradition that's in. Just it's distal to proximal, yes. Now, the multitasking, this attention thing, so from a cognitive point of view, it's really important. And you spoke about this, Bruce, is multitasking. Now, actually, we don't multitask very well. And the thing about women multitasking, we don't actually multitask any better, really. In fact, none of us do multitask very well. But this is making us multitask. Right? And it's instead of being really focused on one thing and getting really reductionist about what we're doing, we now have to do this, which stops this kind of honing in on one other thing. We have to distribute our attention and be aware of the whole of us. Yes? So it's divided. So in cognitive language, it would be divided attention. So I have to pay here and something else. So it's two things, which ups the ante on the thinking part, right? On the attention part. Feldenkrais is one of the best things I've ever seen for training attention like this. So that, you can drive the car and do, use your feet on the pedals and steer and so on and so forth. So that cognitive demand. And then when you stop, of course, it's such a relief because you don't have to pay attention to it. So you get that feeling of increasing the challenge and then having the challenge made easier, so you get even more a sense of ease. Yes? So the rhythm so this entrainment idea that I think we've talked about, so this is an engineering principle of entrainment that, something will have a rhythm, and when something else adopts the rhythm, that's called entrainment, and that's a very powerful neurological event, actually. If someone starts a rhythm going, you will start moving to it, even if you don't know it. You walk to it, more sort of rhythmic auditory cueing idea, music therapy idea. So that rhythm and pace is important, breathing, yes. So all the internal rhythms that you talked about, heart and so on. Increased demand on systems, spreads attention, different spread. Yeah, so I think we've gone through there. Now, Jenny, you had a little, can someone throw the box to Jenny? So Jenny has a varied history, and somewhere deep in her system there is an engineering brain. And what does your brain like about the bell hand?
Well, I think part of the value of using the bell hand is as an indicator. So if I think of Moshe as a scientist in a laboratory surrounded by dials and meters and so forth, they're ways of measuring what's going on or keeping track of the status of various things. We often say to people, pay attention to your breathing while you're doing the movement and only do it as much as your breathing stays smooth. The bell hand's another indicator that the minute there's a pause in the rhythm, it indicates that you've efforted or braced or done something different. And it's kind of a sensory, kinesthetic and visual indicator of what you're doing with the other things.
And we can see it. And we can mark you on how smooth and uninterrupted your bell hand is out of 10. And we have. Bruce, do you have anything, you have a favourite thing about the bell hand from your teaching and internal experience of it?
I think for me it's the thing about tonus and changing tonus, and how you were saying, I mean, sometimes if I have someone also with pain and I'm trying to bring their system more into equipoise, I would just do movements of the hand that are similar to the bell hand.
Which kind of answers your question, do we use it with people? Yeah. But Yona's already said that that's an experience you've had, is that it helps you soften the holding in your neck. And let's say someone with chronic pain, that's, let's say, half their problem. Who does maths? Who wants to do maths? 50%.
I'm the person with both. I don't want to do maths and I've got chronic pain.
Okay.
Yes.
What percentage, put it in mathematical terms, would you say you're holding your muscles that would contribute to your pain?
I don't know because I've been doing it for so long.
Let's go say, if I said 50%, would you say, oh yes? I'm just being mean and making you do maths because I think you're up for it.
Okay, let's do that then. Probably percentages. Probably about 68.
68%. She said that without holding anything. You can do maths.
I can
Bloody getting a bit cleavagey here. All right. Okay. So, oh, sorry. ATM time. Quick, onto your mats. Sorry.